Can you believe it? Less than 3 weeks after a deadly flood claimed 3 lives, including 2 innocent children, the nightmare has returned to Ruidoso, New Mexico. This time, it wasn't just roads that were submerged, or streets that turned to rivers. A mobile home was filmed being swept away by floodwaters dragged down Cedar Creek like it never existed. And that was just the beginning. Welcome to today's news update, where we bring you real stories more haunting than any movie you've ever seen. In this video, we'll recount the full timeline of the latest flash flood that has struck the mountain town of Ruidoso, sending residents into another wave of panic and forcing rescue teams to battle through a recurring disaster. Part 1. A sudden flash flood strikes. On the afternoon of the 24th of July, what seemed like an ordinary day in the peaceful mountain town of Ruidoso, New Mexico, suddenly turned into a nightmare no one had anticipated. The sky darkened into a leaden gray, and thick clouds silently gathered overhead, an ominous sign of what was to come. Then, as if replaying a tragic script, the monsoon winds unleashed a torrential downpour so heavy that the ground simply couldn't absorb it in time. Within moments, water began to rise fast, fierce, and unforgiving. In just a few short hours, the entire area of Paradise Canyon Drive, once a serene road shaded by trees and filled with birdsong, was swallowed by a raging river. No one could have predicted how quickly the floodwaters would return. A shocking video captured by a local resident and shared on social media showed a chilling scene. A fully intact mobile home being swept away by the floodwaters, sliding effortlessly down Cedar Creek like a weightless toy within seconds. That image, a house spinning in the muddy current, surrounded by howling winds and the panicked screams of residents, has since haunted the minds of many. Some described it as a moment they would never forget in their lifetime. But perhaps the most terrifying part wasn't the destruction of property, it was how suddenly it all happened. With no clear warning. The flash flood tore through roads already weakened by months of drought. Asphalt was ripped away, exposing slippery layers of soil and rock beneath. Trees, some decades old, were no match for the force. They were uprooted and sent crashing onto fences, rooftops, power lines, even blocking the paths of those trying to escape. In just one afternoon, the once picturesque village of Ruidoso was transformed into a scene of devastation. And the saddest part is, this wasn't the first time this small town had felt nature's wrath. Part 2. Disaster upon disaster. This wasn't an isolated natural event. It was a nightmare foretold by what had happened less than 3 weeks earlier. On the 8th of July, the village of Ruidoso had just mourned the loss of 3 innocent lives, 2 of them children. That flash flood, recorded as the most severe in decades, came immediately after heavy rains pummeled the scarred terrain of South Fork, an area still recovering from recent wildfires. The Rio Ruidoso River, once a narrow, gentle stream winding through quiet neighborhoods, became unrecognizable. In less than an hour, the water level surged more than 19 feet, nearly 6 meters, peaking at a record-breaking 20.24 feet, shattering every local flood record known. That flood carried more than just water. It brought down chunks of earth and rock, rotting timber, debris, and fragments of dozens of homes torn apart. Cars were swept away like plastic toys. Metal fences twisted under the pressure of the current, and rooftops were reduced to muddy foundations. The people of Ruidoso hadn't yet recovered. They were still cleaning up the wreckage, still sitting at dinner tables with empty chairs, still waiting on insurance, emergency aid, or simply yearning for one peaceful night without waking to the sound of rain tapping on the roof. And then, on the 24th of July, the second flood struck, as if nature itself was driving its blade deeper into an open wound. People began to ask, When will it end? How many more homes, how many more lives must be lost before Ruidoso is finally allowed peace? Part 3. Desperate rescue in the midst of chaos. Amid the murky floodwaters that swept away everything in their path, there were those who didn't run but instead chose to plunge into the danger, risking their own lives to save others trapped in helpless desperation. At the peak of the 24th of July flood, at least 5 people became trapped inside their vehicles as the water surged too fast, too suddenly, giving them no time to react. Some had been trying to drive out of town but found their roads cut off by rushing currents. Others had only just left their homes when the flood struck without warning. Ruidoso's emergency rescue teams, who had been on high alert since the first flood sprang into action. They had no helicopters, no advanced equipment, only ropes, life vests, inflatable rafts, and sheer courage. Small rescue teams braved the current to reach partially submerged vehicles. Some victims had to be pulled out through windows after car doors jammed from water pressure. In other cases, rescuers broke the glass and tied ropes around each person to pull them across the torrent to safety. As the rescues unfolded, the flood also struck the town's power system. Entire neighborhoods were plunged into darkness. Places like Davis Drive, Spruce Drive, Yellow Pine Road, and Brady Canyon, peaceful and well-lit just the night before, were now swallowed by shadow and the unrelenting sound of rushing water. Power poles collapsed, drainage systems were overwhelmed, and inside many homes, the frightened cries of children echoed as water began to pour through the doors. Ruidoso was forced to open emergency shelters. Some evacuees were sent to Eastern New Mexico University, Ruidoso. Others found refuge at the local community center. No one knew where they'd sleep that night or whether they'd have a home to return to in the morning. The miracle in all this? As of now, everyone who was trapped has been rescued safely. No serious injuries, no missing persons. But the invisible wounds etched deep in their minds may take far longer to heal. Part 4. The threat still lingers. And perhaps the most frightening part is this: it's not over yet. The burn scars left behind by wildfires like South Fork and Salt are still there, bare, unstable, and unable to absorb water. More than 850 homes were destroyed in last summer's fires. Now, those scorched wounds have become the origin points of deadly flash floods ready to erupt anytime the rain returns. This small mountain town is living under a constant state of alert. The next storm could be the final blow for many families. And it's happening right in the heart of summer, a time few would expect to bring death and destruction in New Mexico. An emotional message and a warning. Ruidoso, a name once associated with a peaceful retreat, now conjures images of floods, tragedy, and cries for help in the middle of stormy nights. The people here don't need more rain. They need time to recover, to rebuild their homes, to send their children back to school. But nature, unpredictable and unforgiving, isn't done testing them. If you live in an area prone to landslides or near wildfire burn scars, stay vigilant, watch weather forecasts closely, and most importantly, never underestimate the power of moving water. A single bend in the road could be the place where you're forced to make a life or death decision.